just so people can be able to get in.
Okay.
We are up. Great. Good morning, everyone. We're so happy to have Dave Silvestro here with us to talk about orchestrating virtual socialization, helping kids with LD, ADHD, ASD stay socially engaged during the shutdown. These are really tough times for all of us, but especially for those of our kids who normally struggle with socialization and who need that constant direct support to build their social skills. We're struggling ourselves to try to find ways to interact socially, but our kids sometimes may be perfectly content to isolate themselves in their room, especially our kids who struggle with socialization naturally. It's an easier, comfortable mode for them, but that's not good. It's not good for any of us, but especially for them. And I'm actually even seeing that in my own home with my 18-year-old. So Dave is here to help offer some tips that we can use to encourage and support our kids during social interaction time. We kind of have to almost orchestrate it even more now than we did before because we've got to pull our kids out of that comfort zone. So Dave has been the school psychologist at Eagle Hill Schools for over 40 years. He's currently the school psychologist at the Southport School in Southport. Throughout his career, he's been providing individual and group counseling for students, parents, support groups, dads-only groups, as well as professional training in schools nationally and internationally. Your moderators are Eve Kessler, the founder of SpedNet Wilton, Carolina Corrigan, and myself, Janine Kelly. Just a couple of ground rules. Please feel free to ask questions during the presentation, and whatever questions we don't get to, we'll try to address at the end. But please be mindful to use the Q&A bubble, not the chat bubble, because the Q&A will allow us to keep track of the questions and remove them once they've been answered. Also be mindful that this is an open forum. It's being recorded, and so we can't guarantee confidentiality, so you may not want to reveal any private information that you wouldn't want out there. And then lastly, any information provided by Dave Silvestro or the moderators is not intended to be legal or therapeutic advice. The information, content, and materials are for your general purposes only. So with that being said, I welcome with open arms Dave Silvestro. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Ms. Janine, and thank you, all you invisible people for being here. I have to say this is a novel experience amongst 6 weeks of novel experiences that we've had over the last couple of months or so. But when Eve asked if I would do a webinar, the idea of talking about keeping our kids socially connected was the first thing that came to mind. It may not have been the first thing that was in Eve's mind, but it was the first thing that came to mind. Because we do parent support groups at school, and a lot of the topics that parents are most concerned about now have to do with less about their kids' academic progress and less about their doing their homework independently, but more about being socially isolated, especially for those kids for whom social connections were difficult even before the shutdown and the pandemic and all this new world hit. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about some of the underlying reasons that our kids struggle with socialization. And then, sorry about this, but we're going to talk about how parents need to be differently engaged perhaps from the way that they normally are, from the way that you normally are during a non-shutdown time, just because our kids need a little bit of an extra boost and a little bit of extra guidance and a little bit extra, maybe kicking the fanny a little bit to move towards social engagements when they're reluctant to do so. Love the idea of having questions. I have a little box over here, so as your questions come up, I will see them. When the questions are pertinent to what I'm talking about at this particular point, I would love to answer them then. I will get to all the questions at the end of this, and it's going to be about a half an hour or so. So don't think that I'm ignoring you just because I haven't responded right away. Now, if I can figure out how to get to the next slide, we are, oh, there we go. Okay. Why socialization could be a struggle for our kids. I think yesterday we were talking actually in support group, and one of the moms said, you know, I just don't know why. My kid, I said, well, just call your friend and just talk for 10 minutes. Forgetting that sometimes the language difficulties that our kids have prevent them from doing the regular give and take of conversations. And so for a lot of our kids, they have difficult initiating social contact. That how do I start a conversation? What if I call somebody and they don't want to talk with me? Once I start and we say hello, what comes next? So they are not really all that excited about the idea of starting contact. They have difficulty sustaining social contact and conversation. That once it goes on, once the conversation starts, they really are unsure how to keep it going. When we talk about our kids, the way they talk with each other at lunch tables, that a lot of times our kids will talk about, well, I went to Disney World, which would invite, if we had kids with positive social reciprocity, they would be able to ask about, I went to Disney World too. What was your favorite place? Those things. That type of conversations comes with difficulty with a lot of our kids. And so they're not, and it feels awkward. So they're not inclined to seek out that sort of contact. And they also have a difficult time identifying who are the accepting and available peer groups for them, that they don't know perhaps that this particular group of sort of very high status athletes who look really cool, that may not be the best group for them to seek to gain access to. And they have a hard time identifying who are the kids who are going to be more accepting of them, who are going to be a bit more available to them, who are going to have similar interests to them. And they also, because of sort of their history of social difficulties, they have kind of a pervasive sense of pessimism about this. Why would I even try? Why would I call somebody? It's not going to go well. It's going to be awkward. He's going to get bored of me. The conversation is going to get difficult. All of those things. Why would I do that? And that's based on the history that they have. And in the times that we are in right now, it is even more awkward for the kids to get over that. When kids are in school, they are surrounded by teachers who know them and know what they need and can help guide them during lunch table conversations, during conversations at recess, when they're on their athletic fields. When they're away from that, and they know that they're out of that safety net zone, it's more difficult for us to be able to prod them into moving in the direction of social connections. All right, now, I know there's another slide in here someplace. There it is. Okay, so more about why staying engaged during a shutdown can be difficult. They may feel that, our kids feel that isolation is okay because everybody is isolated. And so if I spend time in my room, I'm no different from everybody else because they're all in their room, they're all at home, nobody is out doing things with other kids. But my 95-year-old mother feels that the rest of the world has finally caught up to her, who stays in her apartment all the time. And she thought that she was ahead of the curve. And many of our kids feel the same way. And there's a comfort in this isolation, and they don't feel different by it. When we talk about FaceTime and Zoom and Hangout virtual engagement can sometimes feel even more awkward than in person. It's new to them. Our kids thrive on kind of predictability and familiarity and routines. This is very, very different from other sorts of contacts that they've had. And therefore they are disinclined to engage that way. There's an increased social worry and anxiety because of the lack of daily informal contact with people. That they like to be able to know what the person who they're going to engage with has been doing. And when they're in school, they're in classes together. They're in the hallways together. They're at lunch together, and they have this shared experience. And that's the next one too. I think that they have even stronger feelings of separation and disconnect because of those shared experience lacks, because they don't have the same classes and assignments. And so when we talk about our kids who are reluctant social engagers anyways, when we add on these layers that the shutdown can have added on to it, it makes our job more difficult. And when I say it's our job, it's because as parents, I dare say from my own experience that my kid's social connections and his connections with friends and peer groups and feeling comfortable in a group was more important than the academic stuff, because I think our world is based on the way that we interact and the way that we relate to one another. And so when we see that our kids who were at least making some progress in school, when they're now away from school and they're retreating, it makes us nervous. It makes us nervous. So, what are some of the things that we can do as parents? And I have to say with this as well, this is not only a new situation for our kids, that this is a really new situation for our parents as well. That we may not be familiar with Zoom or FaceTime or Google Hangouts and those things, and certainly have not been familiar with those tools being used by our kids to have their social engagement, have that be their sole social engagement, because they can't be with other kids. So that's difficult. And so I think what we have to do is, along with all the other things that we have to do right now, that we have to continue to take an active role in orchestrating social engagements. And I think the key thing to this is, and how this happens in each individual family is difficult to say, but the more that we can network with other parents is really, really important. At our school, for example, when we have kids who do not come home and talk about their friends, and they don't call other people on weekends, and they don't keep the engagements that they may have at school going when they're not in school, our suggestion is to talk to the kids' advisors, because the kids' advisors know who of the kids in their classes are kids who would be, and remember that group we talked about in the first slide, who would be available and accessible to them, who would be a good match for them. And then parents call parents. And then, because the kids have the same issues. And so with those sorts of parents connections, you will find someone to network with, to have your kids make that connection with. So that's really, really important. If kids play video games with other people, we demonize screen time, and we know that screen time can be a poor substitute for real face-to-face social engagement. That has an asterisk. When there's not the availability for face-to-face social engagement, we can use screens to be able to give an approximation. It's not a replication, but an approximation of face-to-face time with other kids, okay? And so we can actually encourage and teach our kids to be able to use these things that they may not know about. They may not know about Zoom. They may not know about video games that have the ability to talk with the other people that they're playing. And so at this particular time, if we are finding our kids spending more time on screens, we can't beat ourselves up about that. As a matter of fact, we sort of encourage the kids to use the screens in ways that bring them in contact with other kids. But we still have to remember that we limit the time, especially at night. There are some kids who are late for their classes in the morning because with this new Zoomifying and FaceTiming and everything else, that's what they're doing instead of sleeping, and it's not really a good idea. So we need to make sure that our kids are off those screens at nighttime. It's really important too, if our kids are playing games with other people and they're engaging with other people, it's really good for us to know who those other people are. When I talk with some of my kids and they say, yes, they do play video games. And I asked if they play with friends at school. And they said, well, no, it's other friends. That makes me nervous. And I say, other friends like in the neighborhood? He says, no, just people who are playing online. And so there is that sort of possibility when our kids, that they'll be playing with kids who are not known to families and not being part of the neighborhood. And so it's important for us to try to ascertain who the fellow players are, just to keep our kids safe. It's also, when we can, discourage the use of headsets, because headsets means that when we're in the next room, we can't hear what's going on. And I think it's important, particularly with our socially reluctant kids, and sometimes our kids who are not so socially skilled, it's good to hear what sorts of things are going on in these conversations so we can use what we hear to help guide them as they're playing other things. I hope that makes sense. Yes? Okay. Thank you for your nods. I appreciate that very much. Another thing, let me go back here. Why am I doing this? Sorry. Okay, or organize these FaceTimes, it's much the same things that when we are talking with parents of kids who are sort of elementary school and middle school age kids who are really struggling with initiating friendships, that keep it short. Keep it short. When you have a Zoom or a FaceTime, have it for a limited amount of time so that we know that the kids have the ability to either talk or to engage or to do the activity for the full time of that time. 5 minutes is okay. 5 minutes is okay, because we want kids to have that 5 minutes go positively. So the next time that we encourage them to do it, they will have sort of a history of things going pretty well, as opposed to things petering out and then they're getting bored and then they're getting irritated with one another and then that's how it ends. Does that make sense too? Another thing, it's good to have an outside focus. A lot of times when kids want to, when we want them to engage with other kids, the idea of having a parallel play sort of an activity is really valuable, so that they're doing it with another person, but they don't feel the pressure to have that language-based social interaction. So watch a YouTube, watch a video, watch a TV show episodes, watching, believe it or not, kids watch other kids play video games on YouTube, and they can do that together. And then if something comes up, they can have a conversation based on that. Because we want kids to feel as though this is going to be a situation that has a great chance for success, and are not going to feel the pressure to do things that come with difficulty for them. Also, best to, related to the first one, best to end early than to prolong the visit until things get strained. One of my kids at school loves to go outside and ride bikes with the neighbors. He's not an athlete. The neighboring kids are athletes. When he stays with them too long, the bike ride turns into wanting to go kick a soccer ball, and he's not a soccer ball guy. And so when that happens, he sort of complains about wanting to play soccer, and then it doesn't go so well. And so we keep it short and successful. Also, when we have kids engaged in this Zoom or FaceTime, arrange for another meeting. If it ends early, if it ends positively, said this was kind of fun, let's do this again. Okay, makes sense so far? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so that's fine. We'll continue to do.
Dave,
Yeah.
I have one chat that just came in. It said while you were talking,
Yeah.
and he says, my kid would reject any of this if it appeared engineered by me or any other parent. Any help?
Well, I think what we can do is when our kids say, I don't want you involved, we can celebrate that a little bit. I said, that's great that you want to do this independently. But we know that we're not drawn to do things that are difficult for us. So I want to do whatever I can to help you have this connection. The connection is important. If you don't want me involved, tell me what your plan is. Tell me what you're going to do to get this going. And then I will back off. But I need to see you do this because it's really important. And I have to say, if you do this on your own, that's terrific. I really, really like that. I have to say too, though, that as your parent, this is important enough that if it doesn't happen, I will get involved to help as little as I can in order to get it to happen. Does that make any sense to the questioner? Okay. Yeah, as we talked about at first, kids are not going to be willing to engage in something that they think is not going to go so well, or it's going to tax some of the skills that they have. That said, I think keeping this social engagement, certainly not to the degree that we're replicating what happens in school, but keeping this social engagement during this time to some degree, I kind of think that that's important. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. That with your kids, generate a list of things that they do at home that they find fun for school-age kids or tolerable for middle schoolers. Again, you might not want to be involved in this. And activities that they think they might like, but they haven't tried before. Some of the things that our parents at school are seeing their kids do during this virtual things are cooking, believe it or not. I've been so pleased to see how many kids are baking. I've sent 2 James Beard baking books from 1973 to families because their kids are starting to bake. So that can be a good thing that you can do together. Kids can do Legos together. I can do my Legos here and you're doing your Legos at your house and we can watch each other do it. Some sort of outdoor sports. One of the kids props up his iPad in the driveway and shoots hoops with a friend who has propped up his iPad in his driveway with somebody else who lives in another part of town. Art projects can be fun for kids to do. Fitness challenges, you know, let's see how many times we can jump up and do these sorts of things if you've got kids who are athletes or things with soccer balls or whatever. Scavenger hunts can be fun. Baking, card games. Those are some things that are not techie. They're not high-tech sorts of things. There are things that can happen at home, and there are things that the kids might do right now, but might not have done and might want to try doing those things. And when you get that sort of list, get into your parent network again to arrange a time when your kids can FaceTime while engaging in one of these activities. Other parents, if you say that this is what I'm doing, other parents will do that. That happens at the support group that we do, that when parents talk about one things that they're doing, that sort of acts as a network. Then other parents say, wow, that's a good idea. I think we could try to do that ourselves. And so connect that with other parents to see if we can keep that stuff going. Make sense though? Okay. Also, with the idea of when we're not feeling so great, doing something nice for other people make us feel great. Discuss the workers who have been celebrated as heroes during this time, and then think of something nice to do for them. And then pick a friend who might be interested in the same thing. They might not be able to pick a friend. You can pick a family who you know would be interested in doing something like this as well. And then we're making cookies. I love seeing in places that we've been walking that kids have done rock art that says be kind and thank you and those things. You can do that sort of stuff. Kids love recording videos. I don't know if they do TikTok or whatever that is. They do those things. Do thank you notes, do artwork, collages, drive-by beat parades. I mean, things that are sort of out of the norm of things that we can do. Those are some things that we can do as well. And let me see. I just want to go back one. Did I finish those? Did I finish that list? I just can't move my, yes, yeah. I finished that list. Okay. And now we're just going to have some resources of, or not. Oh, this is one I can do. Okay. What I did here, how are we doing for time-wise? Okay, we're doing okay. What I did here is just sort of, whenever I get articles, I read the Boston Globe, get articles that talk about what it's like for parents and families to be home during these times. And how everybody's making adjustments. These are some articles that can be helpful. And so the Washington Post is sort of a good one. The Parents Together site is good. They did this particular article is on establishing social connections for younger kids and ways that go beyond just the in-home activities that we were talking about just a couple of slides ago. But this is to use the technology and use it in sort of a positive way in different sort of activities and games that you can do. Social activities and games for tweens and elementary school ages. Common Sense Media has, they talk about different things to do online for kids. I confess to you that the first time that I asked for games to do on Zoom, the first 2 were drinking games. And so I thought that might not be the best thing that I should put on this. But then when you do the search for kids games, you get things like this. Parade Magazine has some good ones as well. And I think that that's about it. Okay, I'm just going to read one of the questions that we have up here, if that's okay, Lena. Is that okay? All right, my 16-year-old daughter insists that her friends don't get on Zoom calls until very late, and she wants to talk until after midnight on a weekday and after 2 a.m. on weekends. We're having huge conflict about this. She has ADHD and does not limit herself on the phone independently. Can I don't have to type the answer, right? I can just talk it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can just
You know,
Answer it live.
yeah, I bet you that your 16-year-old daughter does have friends who Zoom really late. But I think that she needs to know that if she is on late, there's an impact on what happens the next day as well. And if her being with her friends late means that, you know, she doesn't get up at 2 in the afternoon, or her mood is different in the morning, and those things, that is not a good thing to happen. Also, as a family, you may not think that having kids be on technology that late, even if they happen to be 16 years old, is something that you're willing to do. And so she has to kind of have friends who are on a little bit earlier than that. I think at 11, during these times, if my thing is that you're off by 10 under normal circumstances, under abnormal circumstances, I can live with probably 11 to 12. So we can flex a little bit. 2 a.m. is a little bit too late for me. And I think if that doesn't fit with your family, I think it's good to explain to your daughter why it doesn't fit with your family and what the impact of that is. Does that make any sense? Okay. What about high school age kids? High school age kids are a little bit more of a challenge because they are used to being much more mobile than our elementary school kids and middle school kids aged are. On the positive side of that, they are much more familiar with the technology perhaps than some of our younger kids. I think there are some things that we've talked about can be related to high school age kids as well. That may be sort of another topic when we talk about high school age kids, and that's just difficult because I think more than other age groups, our high school age kids are really chafing at this more than the younger kids are at this particular point. Can you give me a little bit more, if you can give me more of the issues related to high school age kids, and I'll come back to that question in a little bit. Okay, this is the FaceTime and Zoom. Very opposed to FaceTime and Zoom meetings with her friends. It's too awkward for her. She says she's been texting with a few friends, but we feel she's also isolated in those things. Says LD, ADHD, and anxiety, so we have a lot to navigate, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's really good that she's keeping up with her classwork, that is something really to celebrate. I think that she may be somebody, when we talked about the parallel play sorts of activities, that may be something that she does. The kids watch Netflix together, that they're watching a movie on the television, and yet they have some sort of connections with either by the phone or by the iPad. They're doing FaceTime and Zoom while they are doing that. That takes some of that pressure of engaging in the conversation off. And so I would suggest that you suggest to your daughter to try something like that. Because again, it is okay for parents to tell kids that we value social connections more than they do. And so that it is something that you really want to build into what goes on in the family. It's like chores and responsibilities and those sorts of things too. And so to help her find ways to connect with other kids in ways that feel less awkward because there's less pressure on it for her, that's what I would suggest for that one. Okay. Um, my son doesn't get up in the morning for class. He does his schoolwork in bed. Can I get him up? Yeah, boy, are you not the only one who is wrestling with that. That's what our teachers talk about all the time. I think when we talk with parents and we talk with our kids, that we say an important part of doing your schoolwork as efficiently as you can is sort of, it's not a professional approach to it, but it's a serious approach to it. That that find a place to do your work that is similar to a place that you have in school, that it has all of your materials, that you are sitting up, that there is a desk, that you have those sorts of things available to you. That's important. I think we want our kids to be able to get up on their own. And so if we have alarms for them and they can use their phone or whatever it is, an alarm clock that's backed up by your coming in and doing it, like trust that they're going to get up, but verify that they actually have. To do that, I think it's kind of important. Again, depending upon the kid, although I think it's good for our kids to develop that sort of independence late, elementary school, and certainly in middle school, that they do it on their own. I think kids would rather not have us involved. And the way that we can get them to not have us involved is to take responsibility successfully on their own shoulders. But the successfully part is key. So help them with an alarm clock and say that, you know, if you work at the desk in the place in your room, then in your room is the place to do this. But being in your bed is really not the ideal place to be able to do your schoolwork. Okay.
Hi, Dave. It's Carolina. I'm just reading. I'm getting 2 emails from questions, and I think you touched a little bit about this, but it's about a parent of a teenage boy trying to let him manage his social connections. Don't want embarrassing by coordinating. But again, it's not happening, and she's like, what can I do to help? And I think you touched a little bit about that before.
Yeah, you know, and I think when our kids want to take the responsibility for this, I think we celebrate that. I mean, we really do, and we try not to take offense that we're being pushed away by it, because then the kids are going to get more entrenched about doing, you can't tell me what to do. But if you say independence is really good, I said, you know, sometimes that we want to do this on our own, sometimes the ideas are kind of floating in our head, but they're not really organized into a plan yet. And I know it's helpful for me to have some sort of plan. Tell me what your plan is, because it's important that if there's not a plan, the likelihood of this happening is not going to happen. And so engage kids in the process of just letting them know letting you know what their plan is, and then maybe we can help shape that plan with them.
I do have another Q&A, but I also have another email question.
So the email one first?
I have, how do you help your child with emotional dysregulation to establish boundaries with communication? Her daughter's 9, and when she's given limited use, but when she does have the opportunity, it becomes excessive, and she text and all the friends, and then to the point where the friends are no longer responding. Right. And then she gets upset, and then she gets upset about herself. Yeah. And it's very challenging for working parents to try to monitor.
Sure. Yeah. You know, I think when we have kids who are almost addicted to the process of texting, that they're just filling the whatever they are, the broadband, with text because that's what they think is the right thing to do. That is a challenge, I think, and those are the times where we need to say, although this is a tool that can be used for positive social connections, she's not ready to use it for positive social connections at this particular point. And so we don't have her have access to those at this particular point. She may be one who may be better with FaceTime or with Zoom sorts of things. She's getting more feedback from the person whom she's speaking with because she's seeing facial expressions and tone of voice and those sorts of things. It may allow her to shape the way that she's interacting with these other kids better. So she may not be she may not be a text person at this particular point. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. When kids are required all day to participate in online schooling, how do you limit technology, which is developmentally appropriate, and also show them to use technology to socialize? Sometimes my 2 middle schoolers seemed overwhelmed by all the technology uses. Yeah, that feels more like me. And yeah, it is. And it is. We were in a world 3 months ago where everybody was cautioning against too much screen time because we talk about the effect on cognitive development, effect on social development, and those sorts of things right now. And now we're saying, oh, but by the way, when we have a pandemic, we want to be able to encourage people to be able to do that. Online things are not the only things that we can do with our kids. If we can be confident that there can be social distance bike riding, for example, that is something that we can do as well. If your kids, don't want to use technology excessively after the stuff that they do at school, then you can limit it. You can say that, you don't have to be on this stuff all the time. You don't have to be doing, technological things all the time. And maybe there are some things that you can do with other people and stay connected with them. The things like sort of watching Netflix with other kids, doing something that doesn't require you to engage, but it's something that's just like a shared experience. Use the technology for a shared experience. Then we have 8-year-old does not do homework. He does not like writing. We told him, we did hold him back a grade, and he has been on strike, so to speak, in general about school. As the first time around the 2nd grade, he would do his homework. This time, not the same. We're not engaged enough to talk and just wants to do what he wants to do, play Nintendo and Switch, and takes breaks to play backgammon and eat. Consequences will get him very angry. Yeah, I think when we get kids who are very much entrenched in their routines that make them feel good, when he's engaged in video games, that sort of is absorbing, and the rest of the world that is not so much fun for him is at bay. I think when we do limit technology, our kids are going to be upset. Annalise Karen, who's a therapist in Westport, did a talk at our school on e-parenting, and she said with her own kid, who's a middle schooler, who plays video games, when it's time to stop the video games, she knows what video gaming does to the brain and does to cognitive processes and does to mood. Said she doesn't have to do anything for half an hour because it takes that long for the effect of this video game to sort of seep away from him. And after a half an hour, he's ready to engage like he normally would. And so when your son puts up a stink about having limitations on his screen time, that's what he kind of gets paid to do. He's testing the limits of you in terms of what, will you stick with this if I throw a hissy fit? It's a reminiscent to tantrums. And I think he will continue to be upset until he knows that being upset is not going to get you to change your mind. And so he will then sort of accommodate that. And also, we can and should leverage our kids having the opportunity to do things that they want to do while they do the things that they need to do as well. That the more that they meet their responsibilities, the more that they can have access to the things that they want to do. Does that make sense? Okay.
Mhm.
Is that it? I'd like to.
That's what we have for now. I don't know if there
Okay.
might be somebody typing.
I do
Yeah.
have a suggestion if someone is still kind of formulating their questions.
Oh, great.
I love your suggestions, Dave. I think they're awesome, and I can't wait to use them in my own house. I understand the struggle that some parents may have with
Yeah.
with suggesting those as a parent to their child, and I have that in my own house. But I want everyone to remember that we are still part of a school team. Even those of you who may not have a formalized IEP school team, you still have access to teachers and social workers and psychologists at school. And if you're finding that your child is preferring to be isolated in that comfort zone and you can't, and they're not willing to listen to your suggestions, send them an email. I heard great suggestions from Dave Silvestro on how to get my child engaged, but they don't want to hear it from me. Can you help me suggest these to my child so that we can get them out of their comfort zone? Just remember that there
Great
are
idea.
people to help you. We may feel like we're alone on this island, but we do still have people at school who are working every day to help our kids, not just academically, but socially too.
No, that's a great idea. It really is.
I think there was just a follow-up.
A follow-up, yes. We're talking about, sort of the child that gets aggressive when sort of consequences and limits are onto that too. And that is hard. It is hard when kids get aggressive. I think it's sort of like the we'll do, Jeff, the idea of what you have to pick your poison when you're dealing with the prospect of his getting aggressive. When you put what are reasonable limits that are in the family's and his best interest overall, that is better than having him think that being aggressive gets in his way. And so there's going to be a battle. It's just what you want the battle to end, what you want the battle to be for, if that makes any sense. Okay.
Yeah. We are on time. Well, we're really on time. Yeah, so
Okay.
I don't see any other questions, but that was a great suggestion, Janine, to just reach out to resources around you. Oh, here's
And I also think that the idea of that parent network that get together with other parents, if kids see that other kids are doing things that their parents are directing them to do, it is sort of in a strange way kind of okay, more okay than if we just sent it ourselves. My kid would reject anything, Diana. That's kind of funny.
yeah. It's funny how that works.
Oh, it sure is. It sure is. Yeah. And I think the idea of parents being as involved as we have to be now in this world, way more involved and way more tuned into what's going on educationally with our kids, and have to be more involved socially, particularly those kids who are not going to do it independently. It's just different. It's just different. And our kids, particularly when they're getting older, they want to be more independent. They desperately want to be more independent. And when they're at school, that's their world that they're just not, it's not a parent-directed world. And now everything involves their parents, and it's more of a struggle. And so that it is a struggle is not an indictment on parents in terms of the way they're doing things. It's just part of the deal. But we have to make decisions as to the things that we think are still important and that are worth the battles for. It's hard. This is hard. It's hard for everybody. It's not supposed to be easy. But I think when parents feel as though they're not alone, that other people have the same sort of issues and the same wrestling with the same sorts of problems, that's comforting in some ways. Comforting.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see any more, and I see some where we lost a few peeps here, but yeah. If
Okay.
there's anything else, anybody wants to, oh, I
Thank
say
you,
that
guys.
every time it just pops up. It's like it takes.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you for checking in. Thank you for coming.
And I appreciate the opportunity. This is good. This is good.
This has been great, Dave. Thank you so much.
Oh, good.
Is
Yeah.
always
Boy, I
appreciated.
see, now you've seen these before. I had no idea what to expect. I really had no idea what to expect. I have to say, I was looking at you guys an awful lot. An
Yeah.
awful lot. Okay. No, we're getting, I'd like a copy of the slides if possible.
It'll be posted on the website. Can you hear me?
On the website.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
all slides will be posted on the website, and the footage will be posted on Facebook
They'll be on our,
Website too.
and the website.
yeah, and we are, you'll find SpedNet on Facebook with our videos. You'll also find us on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. All our webinars and our presentations are recorded and up there, and the slides are usually on the website. So we'll try to send out a follow-up email for the people who register who couldn't make it.
Perfect.
So with that,
Thank you, Dave. You're awesome.
Thank you, guys. No, this
thank
was
you.
fun. All right, good luck, and you guys stay safe.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Now leave meeting.